The earliest drawings I have, I guess we could call it my first sketchbook, full of terrible pen drawings and lots of Mushy Monster stuff. I really love Mushy Monsters. Lots of misspelling and some saucy stuff that I apparently had to cover up. My second oldest sketchbook. In this one I started to experiment with my style. I used some paints. I really have no idea what that is, but I'm very disturbed by it. I drew my first ever drawing of a human that I actually liked, and thus started my I started drawing my favorite YouTubers and characters, and I really liked Subway Surfers a lot. And I drew me and my friends, and I was starting to have fun. I only drew in this style for a little while though, because eventually, one day, it came to me. My art style suddenly just flew out of nowhere, and I quickly drew it down on some orange paper, and it stuck for a while. And then I started using watercolor paper and getting more serious about my art. I started drawing regularly. I created my first OCs. I started to become proud of my work. For me, drawing was less about the actual drawing and more about the character creation. So most of my drawings were very stiff with the hands behind the back because I didn't know how to draw hands. And thus birthed my first labeled sketchbook, full of pencil drawings and watercolors and highlighters and mess. Really, I drew my first person looking to the side. I drew a lot of Lindsay Sterling. It was all very fluoro and kind of gross. I did my first ever pen drawing. That's there, fun fact. And I created more OCs, and I was generally pretty happy. Some of my anatomy was a bit questionable. My second sketchbook, I used markers a lot, and I was really getting into my OCs, but then I hated markers and I went on to watercolor, and that stuck for a long time. I started using more references for my art. I was drawing more of like my favorite characters from TV shows and stuff. I was creating more and more OCs. Honestly, I created far too many OCs. I started drawing real people. It was a fun time. It was around about this time where I won a school drawing competition, and I started learning how to draw a bit more realistic. Along came my third sketchbook. This sketchbook was pretty boring except for the fact that I learnt how to draw dudes, which was a pretty big deal. Then out of the rubble emerged Drawbreeze, my online persona, and frankly, one of the best and worst decisions I've ever made. Fourth sketchbook. With this one, I started to get a little more comfortable. I started sticking things in, printing stuff out. I started drawing with pens, I changed my art style, it was a whole deal. I was obsessed with customizing my sketchbook, even going as far as to getting my friends to write little references in it for me, and sticking in post-it notes and all that jazz. I gotta say, looking back on this sketchbook, I forgot how much I loved it. I started drawing with brush pens as well, drawing my actual friends in real life. It was just such a good time. Then all of a sudden Lindsay Sterling announced her new Christmas album, and I posted this video and it got like over 1,000 views, and it just blew me away that like people could actually pay attention to my art and that people actually liked it. And I started getting more serious about my YouTube channel and making nice thumbnails and stuff. I created a second kind of cartoony style, and I started planning out a comic book that I never actually made. Sketchbook 5. I got a really nice sketchbook this time with really nice paper, and I created Darcy, and from Darcy, I created Ash, and these guys are still my OCs to this day. I started using markers a lot as well. I started just being really proud of my art, and some of the anatomy was a bit interesting. I also got really into Melanie Martinez for a bit. I drew a lot of her, oh my god. I started planning out Ash and Darcy's comic, which I never actually made and still haven't made. I did my first ever thumbnail sketch, like what? Sketchbook 6. I did about 3 good drawings in this before I decided that I hated my art style with a passion and decided to switch it up. And yep, I switched it up good, and it took me an entire sketchbook to try and figure out how I wanted to switch it up exactly. And now I have the art style that I have today. Sketchbook 7 was mainly just me showing off my new spandangled art style that I loved with a passion. I started experimenting with colours and using lines. I started to draw Ash a lot more. He dyed his hair. It was a whole deal. I started using references, but I got like kind of addicted to using references, and it didn't end up benefiting my art at all, really. This sketchbook was really just used for me to get out of my kind of funk of using references and like getting comfortable with messing stuff up. I also got really into Detroit Become Human, and honestly, I love this sketchbook so much because it's very informal and just full of some drawings that I love to death, like this one. I really like this drawing. I think it came out really nice. I also got into falsetto, so that happened. Again, really trying to learn how to make up my own references and not rely on pictures from Pinterest. And then I drew Sunny, who was the best OC ever, 10 out of 10, good girl, would OC again. I also went to Interactive Introverts and wrote down the lyrics to Phil's diss track on the back of my book. And here we are now, sketchbook 9, continuing to draw my favorite characters in pen and have a good time, and you know, who knows what the future will hold for my art and whether it'll get better or just go downhill, or maybe I'll die, you know, you never know.